The Astounding Broccoli Boy by Frank Cottrell Boyce. What adventures does the city hold for our heroes tonight? I lay in bed that night. Tommy Lee still wouldn't turn the light off, just hoping and waiting for him to sleepwalk again. Every now and then I'd ask him a question just to see if he was still awake. Where do you think we'll go tonight? We're not going anywhere. I'm not going outside again until we stop being green. But Tommy Lee, we've got superpowers. You can't have superpowers and not use them. What superpowers have we got? You can open locked doors in your sleep. Opening doors is not a superpower. It is if they're locked. I always look out for the codes on the doors when they put me in hospital, he said. If you watch where their fingers go, you can work it out. I hate being in hospital, so I always look for the codes. Then at least I know I can escape if it gets too bad. Are you in hospital a lot? I was in for months when I was little. That's how I learnt kickboxing. They gave you kickboxing lessons in hospital? No, they gave me blood tests, so I kicked them. Apparently, that was when his mum decided he had a talent for violent footwork, and that it was only right to nurture it. He didn't say anything else. I thought he might be asleep. I tried another question. Your brain has got bigger. Don't you think that's a superpower? Before you could only draw one house. Now you've drawn a whole city. No answer. I slipped out of the bed to turn the light off. I'm watching you, he growled. I can't get to sleep. Read me a story. What story? From a book. The only book I had was Don't Be Scared, Be Prepared, so I read him bits from that. He particularly liked the bits about jumping out of a moving car, or off of a moving boat. He made me read these 3 times. On the 3rd time, I put in a bit about the boat rocking like a cradle. His eyes drooped, then they closed. For a few minutes, he looked like a big, sweetly sleeping baby. Then he gave a snore that sounded like a tiger gargling treacle. Then he rolled over, plonked his feet on the floor, stood up, and started to do the spooky Playmobil. I followed him, hoping he was going to go straight to the window cleaner's cradle and out into the night, or at least go to the staff canteen where I could get some cheese. But he didn't. He just wandered up and down the top corridor, going in and out of the side rooms and rest areas, as though he was looking for something. Finally, he found a kind of waiting room for kids, with a slide and a drawer full of face paints and some colouring books. All the pictures had been started, but none of them had been finished. There was fake snow on the windows, and a big picture of Santa and a bucket of Lego with tinsel wrapped around it. It was nice doing some Lego with Santa looking down. You could pretend it was Christmas morning, even though Christmas was weeks off. I ended up building a really tall Big Ben. I only stopped when the sun was coming up, and Tommy Lee was properly asleep in a Wendy house. I managed to get him half awake and made him sleepwalk us back to the singing duck door. I'd found an old Spider-Man annual in the waiting room that I'd brought back to the fish tank. Dad had exactly the same annual under his bed back home. Home. Home was so far away it sounded like the name of a different planet. It was the same story the next night, and the night after, and the night after that. We'd get into our beds, I'd ask him questions to see if he was awake. He would answer the first few, such as why he hated leprechauns, long story, how he turned green, same story, what it feels like to have an allergic reaction, you feel like a football and someone is inflating you, and how come he was so good at talking like a supervillain. First time I was in hospital, my mum couldn't come to see me because she was working. There was no telly. All I had was the Batman annual for 1996. I know everything the Joker said off by heart. That's how I know you haven't got a superpower. How? Because the minute someone gets a superpower, they get big muscles. Even Spider-Man. There's no such thing as a puny superhero. You are puny. I thought about the Spider-Man pyjamas I'd had when I was little, the ones with the foam muscles. I measured my muscles every day after that, in case there were signs of improvement. Some nights, Tommy Lee would ask me questions such as, who would win in a fight between a python and a crocodile? Or, his favourite, who would win in a fight between Rory Rooney and Tommy Lee Comiskey? You would win, Tommy Lee. Yeah. So go back to sleep before I come and check that fact. After question time, when it was quiet, he'd float across the fish tank and open the door. The scariest bit was making sure that Nurse Rock didn't notice, but she was almost always staring at her phone and eating chocolate. She ate a different kind of chocolate every night, by the way. Toblerone one night, Galaxy the next. What kind of person can't settle on a favourite type of chocolate? A 100% untrustworthy kind of person, that's what. I tried everything I could to make Tommy Lee go back to the roof. I tried to put the idea in his mind by saying the word roof over and over when he was drifting off to sleep. I tried walking in front of him to see if he would follow me, but he'd keep veering off into the side rooms and cupboards, like the time he opened one door and thick wet clouds came pouring out. I thought it must be the door to the outside world, and that it was foggy outside, but the clouds were warm and smelled of lavender. Then there was a break in them, and I saw 3 dark-haired women staring straight at us from behind a row of ironing boards. The minute they saw us, they dropped their irons and made the sign of the cross. The smallest one shouted, "Ay, Madre de Dios," and I realised that we'd walked into the hospital laundry. All the time I looked back and he'd gone into this little round room. It had a circle of chairs arranged around a table with flowers, a book and a shoebox on it. The book was the Bible. The room was a chapel. I opened the shoebox. It was stuffed with yellow post-it notes. Each of them had some sad thing written on it. Help our Sammy get well. Look after my mum, I need her. Let Niall come home from the hospital soon. Please make our baby better. There were hundreds and hundreds of them. There was a poster on the notice board too, showing some little sick kids playing with Mickey Mouse in Disney World. Underneath it said, "The Wish Factory, granting magical wishes to children and young people fighting life-threatening conditions." I thought how the whole hospital, the 12 stories, the long winding corridors, the locked wards, was really one massive shoebox stuffed with sadness. My 200% brain could almost hear all the sighs and all the worries, the mums and dads sitting in the canteen waiting for something to happen, frightened, sleepless children twisting in their beds at night, patients hooked up to machines that bleeped and buzzed, relatives watching the machines, wondering what the bleeps and buzzes meant, nurses and doctors who understood what the machines meant and wished they didn't have to translate, and the injustices too, such as "I've been brave" certificates being given to children who weren't even a tiny bit brave, the children who were made to eat nothing but frog spawn by people who stuffed themselves with different kinds of chocolate night after night. So much sadness. I felt as if I was going to burst. What was the point in having a 200% brain, or being able to slightly teleport, if you couldn't fight injustice? We had to get out of here and do something. Tommy Lee must have had the same feeling, in his sleep, because that was the night we finally went outside again.